Special called meeting today, August 17th, 2015, at 6 o'clock. If we can all rise for an invocation, and Chief Gonzalez, can you lead us in an invocation?
This is bow our heads. Dear Lord, we come before you on this tonight's meeting. Just give us the knowledge and the blessings to make the right decision for the city of San Juan. Pray for everybody out there that's in need, and for all those individuals that go through hard times. Lay a hand on top of them. In your name we pray.
Amen. You can face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All may be seated. Our item on the agenda tonight is item A, discuss and consider the proposed tax rate for the city of San Juan for fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2015 through September 30th, 2016, and setting public hearings. And before we get started, I do want to recognize that we have present with us our tax collector, Mr. Paul Villarreal. Thanks for joining us here. Mr. Garza.
Good evening, Mayor, Commission.
Good evening.
Can you go to the next one? If you can see on the first page on our certified totals, if you notice under net taxable value, it actually went up 4%, right, compared to prior years in 2014. Now, if you notice, our freeze adjustable taxable value went down by 39 million, by 5%, right? And this is mainly due to increases on the homestead cap, exemptions, and the freeze taxable value, right? On the next page, these are factors affecting the taxable value in 2015. And as I told you, increase on homestead cap of 44%, which is around 6 million. An increase on exemptions by 7%, representing 12 million. And a 75% increase on freeze taxable value from people over 65, representing 75 million of value compared to 2014.
That's where I have questions. Okay. When we look at our numbers, I guess my question is, what establishes, how often do we look at our folks that are asking for exemptions? And what would we attribute that there's a 75% increase from one year to another? And included in these amounts, do we also have in consideration what was put in protest, or has that been resolved?
Mr. Villarreal, can you help me?
The protest, the only values that you get is just the certified values. The protest still pending. So those, we get them in supplements, so later on that money will come in.
So it's not included in here in the
Right.
overall value?
Correct.
Do you know how much we have that's still pending? And
Do you have a copy of that? I'm not sure if she does, but one of the things that, I mean, the media, every time that they go out there and protest, they make it a big issue. So now people are becoming more aware of well, I'm over 65, I'm disabled, I can go out there and apply for this exemption. So it actually became, there's about, in protest, is 1,900,000 for 14. It's not that much,
Not
but
that
it's
much.
still money that still would be coming in later on.
okay.
And
And as far as the increase in 75% is
Yes.
because of just awareness?
Correct.
Not
Yes.
that we have suddenly a very
No,
aged.
no. I mean, it could be that, I mean, if you only had 50 properties and then 200 more came in, that's an extreme, for this city, this size. When you're looking at value of billions, it doesn't affect you when you have, an increase of that many. But when we have a smaller value, then you can see it as you can see, 75%.
Thank you. So, Mr. Garza, when you put down the difference between the valuation minus the taxable freeze, which means that we're not going to have anything above that, is that when you subtract the 25 million? Your freeze taxable. So when we look at the 853, it's minus the 25 million, which means that whatever we apply will only affect the 85.
The 853,
I mean,
right?
850 million.
Correct.
And the other just kind of whatever rate we are now, that's all we'll ever get from that particular property, is that correct?
Uh-huh.
And any increases will only be attributed to the new numbers that we're looking.
To the new numbers, correct. If you see on the next page is our effective tax rate. And I'm actually giving you three different scenarios, right? Scenario one, we actually select the effective tax rate of 0.6771, right? That's actually gonna give us 5.5 million in revenues. Compared to scenario two, which is our last year's tax rate of 0.6993, that's gonna give us a 5.7 million in revenues. And if we select the rollback tax rate, which is scenario three of 0.7375, that's gonna give us 6 million, an estimated 6 million in revenue.
Okay, so when we adopted the rate at 2014, that was the estimated, at that time, what we would have yielded at 0.699.
Uh-huh,
And is that the rate that we use then within our budget?
correct,
Okay.
correct. The only thing that has changed from there to now, it's our freeze adjustable tax value, right? That went out there,
That made a change.
correct. The next page, it's the same thing, or scenarios. So if we go by scenario one, we're gonna be talking about a loss on revenues of 420,000 compared to last year. If we select the scenario two, it's gonna give us 240,000 loss on revenues. But if we do rollback tax rate of 0.7375, we can go up our revenues by 68,000.
Question I'm going to go ahead and pose then. If we keep the same rates, you know, like every time we look at this, the effective tax rate based on what we're building would say that it's less than not the effective, the effective tax rate today would be 0.67 cents, right?
771, correct.
But and still, it's because of the valuations. But if we keep it at today's rate, we're not raising taxes, we're keeping the same rate, we still look at 240,000 less, and that would be attributed to the fact that those capping and,
Correct. The taxable value went down by 39 million.
okay. But it doesn't say that this past year we had a deficit,
No.
right?
Like deficit on,
In our own budget, I'm thinking, since we used a budget number that did not realize,
uh,
and we based it on that for the entire year, and we're gonna
Correct.
have to do an adjustment to our budget,
uh-huh,
that in this year, in this particular year, that we're gonna close out in September 30th, we're not estimating we're gonna have a deficit,
correct, no.
just because the revenues are low, but
No.
our rate between what we should have gotten and what we expended gets less. So anything we have left over is being reduced by 200,000.
200,000, correct. We have to adjust the budget by that amount.
Okay, so if we take it into account in this year's budget at 0.699, then what we're gonna have to do is, we still had a valuation increase, right?
Right. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Can I say something?
Yes,
in
uh-huh.
regards to that? Because I don't know exactly where you got the figure, but where it says there's a loss of revenues of 400,000, I mean, I gotta let you know that that's, probably doesn't look right for me.
Okay,
The thing is that maybe you used this year's value times the 0.6771, so you came out on the other one as 5,900,000. But the effective tax rate, if you use that same tax rate, is gonna give you the same amount of revenue as you had last year,
okay.
okay? So you're not gonna lose 420 or not, you're gonna get the same amount of revenue. So that's why, right here on top, it says, if you pick .6771, you should get 55.25. If you wanna go ahead and select the proposed rate, which is higher, .6993, that means you're gonna gain more, because you're not using the effective rate, which is the same amount of revenue. You're gonna gain about 181,000 to the right. If you wanna go with the rollback rate, that's .7375, that's the limit. You can gain up to 492,000. So at that point, you can propose what you like. If you were to select the .7375, you can always come back at the time that you adopt your rate and go lower if you want. But the effective tax rate,
Right now, if we kept what we had last year,
if you want to collect what you collected last year's revenues, with the effective tax rate, you can get the same.
So, Mr. Villarreal, so we're not per se losing it, we're leaving it on the table, pretty
Well,
much, right?
Yes, you're not, effective rate is you're taking last year's value divided by this year's value minus adjustments or refunds. It should get you the same amount. When the value goes up,
Yes.
your rate goes down.
Correct.
That's why you have .6771. And now, most of the other entities, they always say, you know what, we're gonna go ahead and keep the same tax rate. We're not gonna increase it.
Correct.
But since the value went up, that means you're gonna gain some. In this case, depending on what you need for the city, sometimes, there's other areas or other entities that propose the rollback rate, and they can always, at any time, like I said, make adjustments if they want to. And if everybody's comfortable with it and you need the money, then you can do that. But I just wanted to say that, I know he's making a great presentation, but the only thing is that as far as the effective rate calculation, the effective tax rate will always generate the same amount of revenue as last year. And then you go higher, so.
Now, here come my question, right, to
Yeah.
Mr. Villarreal, is,
clear it up for me then.
yes.
We might have to sit down and
Since-
get some more numbers, but.
Since we are actually basing our revenue, or our estimated revenue, based on the freeze adjustable taxable, right? And it went down 39 millions, isn't that gonna affect our revenues for next year?
Well, but we don't use the freeze taxable, we just use the certified net taxable. We go by net taxable, at that time. You're
Okay.
probably deducting, freezes and things like that, and we can't stop anybody else from applying for those.
No.
But as far as the net taxable, that's.
But
what we go by.
for revenue estimation, I'm talking about, right?
On the city end, we're talking about the tax end and
Correct.
reporting of our practicalities of our
Correct.
Yeah, he's
budget.
talking about the internal thing.
I
I'm
got
just letting
you.
you know that the effective rate will bring you in so many revenues, but I see that he's already going into, what
Okay.
exemptions are maybe coming less. Okay, I see.
Correct.
So, but as far as effective tax rate, our effective tax rate will not make you lose that amount of money. But as far as him looking at the, probably the internal freezes, then you can probably see that.
Okay.
Okay, so then, so really, the reduction that you're, in the certified tax would be anything that actually got granted by means of a protest.
Correct.
Other than that, we're still yielding the same with any kind of increases in valuation of property. So we haven't lost anything.
Okay.
Okay, so take me back to, that our valuation is what is our valuation of what we're gonna yield through property taxes, at the end of this year, to project for next year.
It's gonna,
We're gonna
is
generate 5 million,
5 million,
okay, 5.5.
correct. Yeah. Because I'm basing my estimation on the freeze adjustable taxable.
But if we maintain our tax rate of .669, we're gonna yield 5.7, right?
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
For next year,
For next year.
gotcha.
Now, on the next slide, those are actually factors affecting revenues or estimated revenues in 2015. As I was telling you, freeze taxable value was decreased by 39 million compared to 2014. Right?
which is internal.
Correct. Talking about estimated revenues.
And so, to understand going into the next year, everything stayed constant. We keep the same tax rate. We're going to generate a few more money, close to $175,000 more. I'm just doing a quick one here while looking at the numbers. You're saying that we looked at it based on our budget, and we yielded $175,000 more. We're going to be short $25,000,
Correct.
yes?
Uh-huh.
In our internal budget,
In an internal
by
budget.
keeping this rate.
By keeping this rate. Yeah.
Everything staying constant.
Unless we don't have those many exceptions that we did have the last.
Well, I mean, in other words, we're not going to spend, everything that we're going to report that we make and everything we're going to spend cannot change
Correct.
unless, right? Which means that we can't, whatever we just have to maintain this year into next year based on the fact that we are still below $25,000, which means that we're going to have to look at our budget and reduce it
Reduce it, correct.
by $25,000
Uh-huh.
so that we can keep the same tax rate and maintain our services the way they are without any new anything.
Correct.
So, y'all have any questions? I want to ask Mr. Vela, if I can at this point, something, if I might, Mr. Vela, as we're considering this. So, I know we had a lot of discussion about the end of the year back in maybe April and in going into May as we looked at that issuance that we approved for certificates of obligation for 4.2 million, something like that. So considering the information that we have received now about what it actually was going to be looking like, does that in any way affect what we are considering when we look at those certificates of obligation?
Mayor, may I pull my file?
Please.
First of all, Mayor, members of the City Commission, my name is Chris Vela with First Southwest Company, financial advisors to the City of San Juan. Mr. Villarreal? Yes. Nice seeing you again. Mr. Garza, nice seeing you again. I guess, Mayor, the best way to start is let's start with what we detailed in the CIP. And in the CIP, we detailed initially what we were going to be financing was going to be a street improvement program with a drop to the construction fund of approximately $4,270,000. And that was going to accomplish what the engineers and the city staff had developed as the needs, if you will. Later in the process, there were also some additions of equipment that needed to be funded. For example, a street patcher, a street sweeper, and a sanitation truck. The street sweeper and the hot patch were, I think, critical elements in the maintenance of your streets for the city. And that's a little bit over $500,000. And the sanitation truck is something in the vicinity of $200,000 and some odd thousand. So that brought it up to about $4,900,000, just a few thousand shy of $5 million. Now, the good news is that the sanitation truck, we finished paying off our debt that we had originally for some other, I wasn't here when that was done, but that debt was finished. So there was like a $70,000 payment there that can be used to fund the acquisition of the sanitation truck. In other words, it won't impact negatively in any way, shape, or form.
And that would be with the sanitation fund itself being the source of.
Precisely. And we would match the useful life. I believe the staff has estimated in the CIP that I updated, that was provided to us today, 10 years on on that piece of equipment. So we would try to, in the financing, try to match the payout to make sure that that piece of equipment was paid off in in those first 10 years, if you will. Now, the other two pieces of equipment, I'm going to leave as variables to the very end, okay? And we're constantly, right now, we're updating all of our records with the new information that came in, because you will recall, Mayor, that there were quite a few variables when we were charged with the responsibility of coming up with a program that provided these amount of monies with zero tax rate increase. So, one of the assumptions was that we went from 853 million to a 7% increase in the assessed valuation in the numbers. Remember that we were at the meeting and we did that? So we plugged in 912 million for the calculations. Obviously, that's not going to happen. The other thing that we did was we started out with an assumption that there was going to be some money left over in the general fund, the 400,000, and how we could use that to offset any tax rate increases so that we could keep it at zero. And we had a long discussion on that, and then we provided to you all a better idea, which was the utilization of the balance in the interest and sinking fund, and commit that balance to this particular financing to retire the debt. In other words, to offset any tax rate increase associated with this. And I believe you have something in the vicinity about $500,000 in there. We assumed in the interest and sinking fund contribution $400,000. Could be less, it could be more, depending on how, how we do when we go forward.
From the 500,000 left over for this year.
Exactly, exactly. So what we're trying to do right now is to plug all of that in and tell you that we're also expanding. I also told you when we started doing this, because we started in April, and I told you we weren't going to sell till October. So there's some market guessing that we're doing here, and a lot of things are happening in the market, and the market is extremely volatile with all of the things that are happening worldwide and in this country as well. So we had 50 basis points or half a point in there. We've probably eroded 25 basis points of that, so I still may have 25 basis points in there. The other thing that we didn't plug into those numbers was the ability to get credit enhancement and insurance that will take your underlying rating and increase it to a more prestigious rating, which will mean lower cost in interest. And also, Mayor and members of the City Commission, we also talked about the possibility that there were some small refundings that I had left precisely for this type of an occasion, to where we could plug them in, to where you can lower your debt service, et cetera, to make it work. So I've got all of these things going on in this financing, and that's the reason why I'm a little hesitant to, to commit. But I'm going to say that I think that we can accomplish this minus the two pieces of equipment. The sanitation equipment is okay. The patch truck and the street sweeper, we'll leave it as a variable for right now. And let's see if we can make do with all of the other improvements that we talked about, the drainage improvements, the street improvements, and all of those things that we talked about. We're going to do our very best, to get that accomplished for you. And if for some reason, I have a timetable here that I shared with your bond attorney and the city staff that says that I should be here next week on the 25th with a presentation on the analysis of all of this as to what we actually think, how much you're going to get in proposed savings from the refunding, what's it going to cost to do this in terms of the financing itself, the contributions from the INS updated, the new assessed valuation, all of these things, and hopefully, maybe, we can get the equipment funded as well. But if we can't, I'm sure you all will understand.
Let me ask you a question. The 500,000 that you're looking for on the
400.
400,000 on the debt service if we were not to do that, what would be the effect? What happens?
Because you would have to raise, I mean, have to secure that money from somewhere else.
In other words, we would have to, we wouldn't be able to go for the full amount of what we were projecting.
That would be
You're
another
saying,
option.
To the tune of the same amount that we would not be putting into.
That is correct. It is money, quite frankly, that's on the debt service side, it's not on the M&O side. So in no way impacts your maintenance and operations side or the debt service side stands on its own. This is monies that have been accumulated over some time, and what we're doing is obligating them per council instructions or per commission instructions, on a per year basis. And we're starting to take them, when we make the first payment in 17, what I show here is 122, 120, 36, 40, 36, and 41. So it's over a 6-year period of time. And that's to mitigate having to secure revenues from a higher tax rate on the debt service side.
Because what we had in the half cent that we put to the mitigation of taxes would not be sufficient. We still have to,
We don't know yet, Mayor. That's still a variable, and on Tuesday of next week, we will have a better idea of where we stand on that, or an update on all of these assumptions. Any other questions?
a lot of questions, we won't have the answers till next Tuesday.
Well, try me anyway.
Well, I guess I'm going to go back to when we had the discussion, and Commissioner Ramirez, Mayor Pro Tem, you were here for that, and we discussed, and maybe I haven't seen the final numbers after we took the vote and the directive. I remember including within those numbers, getting to the 4.2, that the machine itself was included as part of that 4.2. So I don't know, maybe something else, some other cost that we did not anticipate that evening got
Well,
included.
Let's total it up.
Yes,
Okay, we have $1 million for Cesar Chavez.
correct.
We have 919,049 for San Antonio.
No, I think that's Las Flores, no?
I show San Antonio,
San Antonio would be 690, about 693,000.
not according to the CIP I received today.
I don't remember not for San Antonio. I remember the two drainage projects were almost $1 million apiece. And the land and the street was 693,000.
Is there an amount there, maybe they,
No, there's no 600,000.
nothing?
What's the amount again, Mayor?
919?
It says 919 for Ridge.
Could
And
it have
that
been
was-
that maybe the
I mean,
engineer
I'm sorry, San
adjusted?
Antonio
San
from
Antonio.
Ridge
For
to
San Antonio.
Cemetery.
What's that?
Could it be possibly perhaps that the engineer maybe adjusted his numbers?
We never got them back to review.
Okay.
So maybe we need to look at that one. I do remember Las Flores, 954. It was a little bit less, okay, so it got adjusted. I know Sergeant Trevino got adjusted, because that was not part of the plan. So that's the extra 300,000. But if my memory serves me correctly, it was about 600,000 that we were actually able to go and include the machine itself, because I don't even see the machine. Here's the road patcher for 220. It was about 189, but so be it. So maybe we can clarify that point, because I don't remember $1 million for San Antonio.
Well, and obviously, Mayor, the better.
Absolutely.
Right.
Time is of the essence here. And like I said, this was received this afternoon, and it was latest that we got as of this afternoon from your city staff. But, and one thing that is comforting is that we now we talked about the CIP. Well, this is the beginnings of your CIP. And it's a document, and we can refer to it, and we can amend it. As we often said, that it's not cast in concrete. Needs change, and the dollars change as well.
So when you reference it's a 4.9 with all the equipment included?
Well, let me go through those numbers again, what we have here.
Yes.
We started with the $1 million for Cesar Chavez, 919,049 for San Antonio, and then for Las Flores, we have 954,430. And then we have for Sergeant Leonel Trevino, 1,345,734. So that's 4.219.
And that's really, it's Las Brechas.
Well, it's a project, Sergeant Leonel Trevino, Las Brechas subdivision, B&H subdivision, 2 and 3 Sergeant Trevino Road. This includes widening and portion of Sergeant Trevino Road to 42 feet from the back of the curb to the back of the curb, back to back.
That one got, I think what he came back with about
Right. Now,
400,000 extra.
so we had here 4,250,000. Mayor, could it have been perhaps that these discussions on the equipment were subsequent to when we,
The only thing subsequent, the sweeper and I don't know which other one, the
patch?
the sanitation truck, those were never discussed as part of this issuance. The only thing was the actual paver. And what was not discussed at that time either was the improvement on Sergeant Trevino. So in a way, if we were adding and switching out, I would say that we would only increase for about 200,000, being the added 400,000 of the road and taking out the paver itself. So I definitely need clarification why these numbers are.
Okay, that's fine.
Another thing that was mentioned, Mayor,
Huh?
for South San Antonio, we were gonna see if we could partner up with Precinct 2 to
Right.
cut that one in half.
That's
And I don't know if we
absolutely
submitted a request yet. Chief, have we done so?
Yeah, if, I need to check on that, but I think that
favor.
the 600,000 was cutting from the 900,000 because precinct 2 was gonna allocate some funds to it. So, but we need to clarify on that, we need to clarify on that.
So I think that those are the things we need to,
Well, let's go through the process and let's see what happens. You know, let us fine tune this for you and get you a better, you know, representation of what the numbers are. Obviously, we're looking at numbers here that were prepared April the 23rd.
so I guess in looking at this, what I'm seeing the effects would be the actual issuance of the obligation, not so much in our day-to-day operation. So the decision's gonna be made as to the entirety of the project or going back to what the original project was with not all the added costs, because we would have had sufficient to take care of everything. So I think if I look at it this way, I can sort of separate it from the tax rate that we need to do business every day. Yes or no? Yes. Because we still be able to pay for it. We just have to find a way to determine what that final amount is.
And like I said, let's fine tune it, let's work through the process. I mean, we've done it before, we can certainly do it again, you know, and see where it takes us. And we're going to approach it and try to accomplish as much as possible. Okay? As much as possible. Now, if for whatever reason we can't, we'll say, well, look, we can do all of this except this, you know, within the constraints that were, or the parameters that the commission approved at the time. Any other questions?
So if we can just do those clarification purpose points as we get into, and maybe when we address it on Tuesday, it'd be a clearer idea of what,
Well, I think if the city manager, if Chief Gonzalez and his staff will refocus on the CIP that was sent out this afternoon, and make sure that those, that they sharpen their pencil on the numbers there. Like I said, the sanitation truck, that's a no-brainer, okay? That'll work because of the fact that the same revenues will take care of that were being appropriated for debt service the previous year. Pretty close. So we're okay there. It's just the street sweeper and the patcher.
And let me ask you, let me just take it one step a little further as we're in all this, kind of trying to find out where we're going, really to pay what we, or to undertake the kind of obligation that we have previously discussed. If in the upcoming discussions that we will be having in our budget in a few days from now, and we look and, we have a discussion about any future capital improvement type of work and projects we may want to undertake, knowing what we know now and knowing with the numbers that we have, and thinking, in this year, we've already done a certificate of obligations based on here, to be able to discuss how much we would need, for example, to undertake 2 million worth of street projects as an issuance. Is that something that if we were looking at our numbers today, based on what we're trying to accomplish that we've already committed to do for our residents, that in this upcoming year, we really would have, unless we can increase revenue other than through taxes, or through taxes, or through another source of revenue, we might not be able to go out for an issuance because there's no new income stream. Would that be correct to state?
If I understood your lengthy question,
I'm thinking that.
the CIP process, like we have discussed before, is nothing short or more complicated, if you will, than a thorough needs assessment of what your needs are. And it's done on an annual basis, and it's reviewed on an annual basis to determine, what the needs are. If you're a school district, your needs change. You may not need an elementary anymore. You may need a middle school. The same thing with cities. Well, maybe this project is no longer a priority like it was, so all of your needs are evaluated, and you've heard me say this before. But most importantly, the next step is the analysis of trying to find the resources that become available to fund these projects. And a lot of times, it's not only funding them through borrowed money, but other monies that may become available. And that's the reason why I stress to clients that CIPs are important, because cities or political entities that are prepared with their CIP, with projects on hand, a lot of times another entity, another political subdivision may come in and say, I have money to do this. Do you have a project? And you say, well, let me check my CIP. Yes, I do. And you're ready to go.
And we do.
Yes.
We do have. It's called the streets. And that's already been charted out.
So
And
to answer
today's
your question,
dollars.
yes, it's a matter of analyzing resources from all ends, if you will.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Vela?
Not me.
Thank you, Mr. Vela.
Thank you, sir.
So from a financial point in our opinion, the tax shouldn't be decreased, right? We should actually keep the same as last year, which is 0.6993. Or you also have the option to select the rollback tax rate, right, of 0.7375.
I want to propose to keep today's tax at 0.6993. Scenario two.
Correct.
That's what's being recommended.
Correct.
I think we're still going to be realizing, I think what we're going to have to do is really go back and evaluate how we're looking at our expenses, but I also want to be able to look at other avenues of revenue that we have not explored, or maybe we haven't pushed to the limit that we need to outside of a tax rate. So that being said, I'd like to, is there a motion to keep today's tax rate at .6993.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
All in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Do we need to take an individual vote on this one or not?
No.
Okay. With that being said, is there anything else that we need to discuss? Chief Gonzalez? No. Yes, sir.
Sounds good. You
Yes.
make a motion for that, and then
We already
we'll-
have, and we've approved it.
And we'll, I guess, set the date and time and place for the
Okay.
public hearing.
Good evening, Mayor.
Good
Uh,
evening.
I had a packet, I think it's right there in front of you. By the
Yes.
way, he did a very good presentation. And in discussing with Mr. Villarreal, as we're going over the numbers from the certified taxable totals from the appraisal district, we do see that there is a decrease in value. Last year's certified value was at 872, and this year it's at 816, which tells us that there's a 56 million decrease in value. And from what I see, again, it has to do with the tax ceilings for the city, that the city, has that exemption of the over 65. With that being said, in the decrease in value, nonetheless, what we provided for you is a benchmark, and the benchmark tells you what you proposed last year, which is at .6993, and what levy it would bring. If you see that number in front of you, 5,706,000, and then it tells you that it will bring an additional levy of 181,000. Okay, that levy might not be it, because remember I stated that you still have 1,900,000 in protested value, so that 5,700,000 can increase. Okay, so you're looking at a possibility of an increase there. As he's recommending that is scenario 2, that is the best rate for the city to propose. And since you've already made a motion, what I need now, if you turn to the second page on the packet that I provided, is a calendar. And since the proposed rate is higher than the effective rate was .6771, then you are required to have 2 public hearings. And from what I have here in the calendar that's been provided to us from the city of San Juan, is that you are proposing to have your first public hearing on August the 25th, 2015, and your second public hearing on September the 8th of 2015, and then meet to adopt on September 21st, 2015. And if you can just make a motion to put those dates in the record, that's all we would need from you.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the dates of August 25th
So moved.
and let me just go ahead, and August 25th, and then September 8th for the first and second public hearing for an adoption for September 21st?
To amend to include the dates as presented?
Is there a second?
Second?
All in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you for being here tonight. Anything else for discussion on this particular item?
No, Mayor.
If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor state aye.
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned at 6:43.